Hello again, and welcome to Denton's Tales. Now, this is one of those, you know all about it. Everyone knows all about it. It's popular knowledge. Except, no, you don't know it isn't, sort of thing. Popular knowledge and actual facts don't always go hand in hand, especially where history is concerned. The NORNIR, plural, or Norn, singular, are demigoddesses in Old Norse belief, the spinners of fate, they who sit beneath the great tree of life, Yggdrasil, spinning the destiny of the human race, deciding if one's life will be good or bad, or even ending it by cutting your thread. One little snip and bye-bye you. They are often referred to as the three spinners, or the weavers of fate, and such like terms. Very romantic, very mysterious, and very wrong. Yes. Like so much about the Old Norse and their world, that is a misconception, and is probably derived from later interpretations that got into Norse mythology later, but there's no real basis for it in the Old Norse belief. It actually goes against all but one reference in the sagas and poems, and that reference is only in the context of how many Nornir there were. In actual fact, there weren't just 3 Nornir. No, there were quite a considerable number of them. That's a surprise, isn't it? And they were not even all Norse. There were Nornir among other peoples mentioned in the sagas. They didn't all just sit beneath Yggdrasil, nor did they spin or weave anything. That's another shocking fact for you. They carved it on wooden sticks, perhaps on the tree itself in some cases, and very far from cutting your thread, I suppose they might have just, well, broken your stick. So perhaps they should be called the carvers of fate. To put it simply, just about everything most people believe about the Nornir is incorrect. The number of them, what they did, where they did it, how they did it, and even who they were, is all based on misinformation. But have no fear, Denton is here to set the record straight, said he, quite unashamedly blowing his own trumpet. Well, I mean, if I don't blow it, who will? They are universally referred to as spinning or weaving, called the spinners and similar titles. And I've done that myself, because everyone understands it. To call them the carvers of fate, people would go, what are you talking about? Some sort of carpenters? But the idea of spinning or weaving fate on a loom isn't derived from genuine Norse mythology. That there is nothing in the Eddas, the Codex Regius, or anything else that directly suggests the Nornir had any connection with fabric, spun or woven. The idea of women using thread or cords to control fate had its origins really in ancient Greece, attaching itself somehow later to the mythology of Scandinavia. In classical Greek mythology, there were 3 women called the Moirai, who are usually referred to in English as the Fates. And they controlled destiny. They controlled what could be called the mother thread of life for everyone, mortals and gods alike. Yes, even the gods of Olympus had to submit to them. Well, with the possible exception of Zeus, who wasn't very good at letting other people tell him what to do, and well, he usually threw a few thunderbolts at them if they did. And as the women ensured that the fate or destiny allotted to each person would run its course uninhibited. There were 3 Moirai, and that number is important as it relates to the Nornir, as they are usually seen, since that seems to be where the idea of just 3 of them originated, as well as the spinning. The Moirai were Clotho, the spinner. Now, she actually spun the thread of life itself from her distaff onto the spindle. To the Romans, who of course took the Greek gods and made them Roman ones by simply changing the names, a bit like Hollywood tends to do, she was Nona, meaning the 9th, originally a sort of fertility goddess that mothers-to-be could call upon in the 9th month of pregnancy. Then there was Lachesis, the allotting one, she who measured the length of life thread that each person received with her measuring rod. That's the length of it, that's your life, that's all you get. The Romans knew her as Decima, meaning the 10th. Lastly, there was Atropos, the inevitable one, and her duty was to choose the manner of each person's death and the time it would come, which I'm sure was a really fun job. Whereupon she would cut their personal life thread with a pair of shears. Snip, and that's you, brown bread. The Romans called her Morta, the dead one, and I think you can see why. So it is from the Morai that the Norns of Scandinavia seem to get both their number and the idea of a thread or a cord of some kind controlling people's fate, and the cutting of it when that person's lifespan was finished, and even a very similar way in which they were named. The three principal Nornir in Old Norse belief, the named ones, are Udur, or just Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, the latter also referred to as a Valkyria, or a Valkyrie, as it is in the singular form in English. Snorri in the Prose Edda tells us that these are called Valkyria. Them Odin sends to every battle. They determine men's fairness and award victory. Gudr and Rota, and the youngest Norn, she who is called Skuld, ride ever to take the slain and decide fights. There now. These three named Norns are the caretakers of the ash tree, Yggdrasil, the great tree of life, the tree that binds the 9 realms together. And they draw water from the well of Urd, and they pour it over the tree's branches. It seems like a pretty boring job. Now, I suppose if one was into horticulture, it would be interesting enough. In the poem Volspa from the Poetic Edda, we are told that the Nornir are virgin women possessing much knowledge, who carve the fate of men on what are apparently sticks of wood. They cut on a stick, we are told, and they lay down the law and choose the lives and fates of men. There's no mention of spinning or weaving on a loom. The weaving or spinning of destiny seems, as I said, to have been borrowed later from the Morai of Greece. And probably so too is the number of Norns. Three Morai, 3 Norns. It is stated in Volspa that there are 3 Norns, and they are named, and Snorri repeats that in his Prose Edda. But they think that conflicts very considerably with other accounts, and is probably a later concept. Well, for example, in the poem Fosnsmal in the Poetic Edda, it mentions that the Nornir are not all of one family. No, they are specifically mentioned as being born among the family of the gods, the family of the elves, and the family of the dwarves. Talk about diversity. The exact number of them being unknown, which is certainly rather more than 3. The Poetic Edda also gives a clear indication that Norns were found among other peoples. They were not confined just to the Old Norse, and they acted as guardians of the fate of those people, just as they did in Scandinavia. There's a surprise now. In one poem, Gudrun tells her brothers Gunnar and Hogni, when they're having a bit of a dispute with the Huns, like they're killing one another, that she wishes they could have made the Nornir of the Huns, as she puts it, weep. Note, not just the Nornir, but the Nornir of the Huns, which shows that Nornir were not confined just to the peoples of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. Other people had their own. They were popping up all over the place. So there were a lot of unnamed anonymous Nornir, both in Scandinavia and elsewhere. But the concept of the 3 named women, attending the Tree of Life, Yggdrasil, while deciding the fate of everybody, that's multitasking at its best. Well, that was obviously much more interesting, and it became the popular accepted version. Those 3 seen not just as the trio that minded the tree and the well and a bit of human destiny, but as the sum total all Nornir that existed, which they clearly were not. Of the 3 Yggdrasil-minding Nornir, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, Urd seems to be the principal one. She is often mentioned on her own without the other 2. She could act independently from her sister Norns. And of course the well from which the great tree of life is nourished bears her name. It is the Urdabrunna, the well of Urd, not the Nornirbrunna, the well of the Nornir. And whenever just one of them is mentioned individually, it is always Urd, which seems to establish her role as the primary one. A variation of her name deriving from the same root also became used for the actual concept of fate itself, becoming the Anglo-Saxon word weird, meaning fate or destiny. And anyone familiar with Bernard Cornwell's excellent and superbly researched novels called The Saxon Stories, which has been made into a TV series, The Last Kingdom, will recall Uhtred of Bebenberg's frequent use of the phrase, weird bid full arad, destiny is all. The modern English word weird, meaning odd or peculiar, derives from the same root. Now, as to names, even the way the three Nornir are named has similarities with the Morai, indicating that they controlled past, present, and future. They influenced time. The Morai had the spinner, the allotting one, and the inevitable one. The first produces what will be, the second relegates the time of it in the present, and the third concludes it, what is going to happen, what is happening, and what has happened, and then ends basically past, present, and future. Now, how does that compare with the three Nornir? Well, school's name means something like what shall be, what should happen. Veladandi means what is coming into being, what is happening right now, while Udur is the past, what has happened, again, past, present, and future. Seems hardly a coincidence that there are three Morai who control past, present, and future, and three Nornir who also control past, present, and future. A link between the two, well, it seems pretty obvious, especially given the fact that early Norse belief so clearly shows there to have been a very considerable number of Nornir spread out among various groups and even countries. In Part 2, I shall look at further attributes of the Nornir, how they allot one's time on Earth, and a possible connection with the Valkyria, which is very, very interesting indeed. So, I shall say goodbye for now, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll enjoy Part 2 as well. Something for you to look forward to with bated breath.